Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Coder. Last week we left off with doing the collision detection for Pac-Man to actually die. Now that we've got that basic mechanic set up, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of an effect to his death. So we're going to actually give him his death animation, and we're going to play the death sound. And I just want to show you guys real quick what happens. I have an emulator here, okay? And I don't know, okay, here we go. I'm going to just try to make this bigger so you guys can see it. Alright, so here's our emulator, and I'm running Pac-Man for the NES on it. Alright, so I'm going to hit play, and I want you guys to pay close attention to what happens when Pac-Man dies. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to try to die. Just waiting here for the ghosts. Alright, so it freezes, then he dies, then there's a little bit of a pause, and then the ghosts come back. Alright, so we're going to actually implement all of that. So I'm going to just move that out of the way. We are going to make it so that because right now, let me show you, and you guys should know what happens here. I'm just gonna wait for this pink ghost to come out. Alright, see how it just restarts? There's like really no there's no stopping, like a clear cut point where, oh, I'm dead, now I'm gonna restart the game. Nothing stops, nothing goes back. Alright, so what we're going to implement in this tutorial is we're going to make it so that when a ghost collides with Pac-Man and the ghosts are not in frightened mode, that means that Pac-Man should die. So what will happen is once they collide with Pac-Man, the ghosts and Pac-Man will freeze for 2 seconds, okay? And when those 2 seconds expire, the ghosts will disappear from the screen altogether. Pac-Man will start his dying animation and the sound, okay? And after the sound and the animation are done playing, there will be a period of time, 2 seconds again, where Pac-Man will, where the dying animation will just disappear, and then nothing will be on the screen. There will be no music for 2 seconds, and then after those 2 seconds, Pac-Man and the ghosts are going to reappear, and gameplay is going to resume as if you just started the level. So that's what we're going to do. I know it sounds like a lot, and I promise that it's not going to take very long, hopefully. I just did all of this just maybe a few minutes, well, actually a few minutes. I've been working on this this morning and to get everything right, and so we're actually going to do also a little bit of cleanup. There are a couple of things that have been bothering me about some of the graphics in the game. Okay, so for instance, we've got Pac-Man, who apparently seems to be in a 16-bit versus an 8-bit kind of a graphic. We are not as pixelated with Pac-Man as we are with the ghosts, and it's really killing my OCD. So we're going to do something about that. I've created new graphics for Pac-Man that'll make him look more like he belongs where he is. And this ghost here, although you don't see it during gameplay, but when I initially created the ghost, I forgot to set the filter to none. So it's actually doing a bit of anti-aliasing here for the red ghost, which kind of looks like crap compared to these because they're nice and pixelated. So we're going to fix that as well. So, don't know what we're going to do first. First, you know what? Yeah, let's fix these first. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our graphics folder and see how we've got Pac-Man 1, Pac-Man 2, Pac-Man 3. I have prepared new graphics, and they are called Pac-Man Chomp 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to drag these in, okay? And you'll see immediately that these are more pixelated than this, okay? So we're going to go ahead and select all of these and change the pixels per unit to 16, not 16,100. And we're going to change the filter mode to point and press apply. Okay, so now that we are also giving Pac-Man new graphics, we also need to create a new animation with those graphics. So first, let's go ahead and click on Pac-Man here, and we're going to change the sprite, the default sprite, to this one. Okay, and so that already looks better. And now we need to create the animation. Now let's have a look and see what the last animation looked like. So we're going to go into animations and click on the Pac-Man animation, double click on that. And we don't have the animation window open, so let's go up to window and click animation. And I'm going to just drag this animation window to here. Oops, to here, nope, to here. Alright. Okay, so now we can look at our Pac-Man animation, and from what it looks like to me is we've got about 15 seconds of Pac-Man animation. So we start off with the first one, then the second, then the third, then we go back to the second one. So that's 15 seconds long. So at every 5-second interval we've got a new Pac-Man frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our graphics folder, and we're going to drag this one up here. Okay, then we're going to create an animation. Let's call this Pac-Man _ chomp. And we're going to put it in the animations folder. And we're going to create a new folder in here, and we're going to call it Pac-Man. Alright, so I'm going to save the Pac-Man chomp animation in there. And we're going to add a property. And click the sprite property. And as you can tell, we've already got the first sprite in here. We've got this sprite in here, we can delete that out. We're going to put the sprite number 2 at the 5th frame. And let me just double check that. Sprite 2 is at frame 5. Sprite 3, we're going to put at frame 10. Okay. And this one we're going to put at frame 15. So now when we play that, we've got a nice little chomp animation. Alright, cool. So we can delete this chomp animation from here. And we have to go back to Pac-Man now, because if you look, we've got the animator controller that's set to be Pac-Man. So we need to change that to use our new Pac-Man animator controller that we created. So just drag that over. Okay. And this, for some reason, reverted back to Pac-Man 1. And it's probably because it's a prefab. So we can actually go into this prefab here and change that, just so that we're on the same page here. And go to Pac-Man. And we'll also do it here. We'll go to graphics and drag this one up here. Alright. So now when we play our actually there's one more thing we got to do. Let's go back to Pac-Man. We've got this idle sprite here, okay, and that's when Pac-Man's idle. We're using Pac-Man 2, so we're just going to drag this one on top of that, so that that is now its idle sprite. So let's go ahead and play, and there's our Pac-Man. Okay, our new Pac-Man. Alright, everything still works perfect. Okay, so we can now delete these graphics, just to keep things clean. Alright, so we've got all of that. Now, let's fix Blinky, because he's bugging me. So, is he like that in his prefab? Yeah, he's using Ghost. So we will change that and go into, actually, yeah, if we change the filter mode here, that should fix it. Yep, now he's perfect. And these are point no filter, point no filter. Okay, perfect. Alright, so the ghosts are fixed, Pac-Man's fixed. Now, let's go ahead and create a folder for the Pac-Man animation. Actually, you know what we should do? We should get rid of these graphics because we're not using them anymore, because we have this whole like ghost graphic thing here. So let's go to our prefabs and select the graphics that we want to use for these. So we're just going to use Blinky right 1 here, Clyde right 1, Inky right 1, and we're going to do Pinky right 1. Pinky right 1. Okay. Alright. So these have been fixed. Now we need to go in and actually do these ghosts here. Or not. They're already set for us. Good. And so is Pac-Man. So the ghosts are good. So we can delete these old ones. So we can go back to graphics and delete these ghosts out. Alright. So now I've got a ghosts folder. This has got all of our ghosts in it. Let's go back to graphics. Let's create a new folder. Call this Pac-Man. And let's move all the Pac-Man graphics into the Pac-Man folder. Okay. Now let's go to our animations. Delete this old Pac-Man animation that we don't need anymore, because we've got the new one in here. Okay, so we've got our animations, we've got our graphics. Okay, so now let's go into the graphics folder and let's drag in the death animation. There are 11 frames total, so we're just going to drag those in. And we're going to drag the first one. Oops. Let's change the filter to point and the pixels per unit to 16. Alright, so let's bring that back in. Alright, that looks better. So, we'll call this new animation Pac-Man Death. And we'll go to Animations and Pac-Man. Something tells me we are not in the right folder. And we are. Assets, Animations, Pac-Man. I don't know why there's two. Interesting. Alright, so let's save that. Add property, sprite renderer, sprite. Okay, so this one will be at every 11 frames. Okay, so I'm going to start out with the first one. That's already there. We're going to remove this last one here. And then we're going to put in the second one at frame 11. And then the third one at frame 22. You all know how to count by 11, right? And then at frame 33. And 34. Or 44, sorry. And at frame 55. Frame 66, which will be 1 minute and 6 seconds. Frame 77, which will be at 1 minute 17 seconds. Frame 88, which will be at 1 minute and 28 seconds. 1 minute and 39 seconds. And finally, we'll do this one at 1 minute and 39, 52, no, 51. Yeah, 50, no, 50. What am I thinking? Yeah, right. We've got 139, and then plus 11 will be 50. And then we will do another one of these right at 2 minutes. Okay, so that'll be our death animation. And if we play that, we get that nice slow death animation there. Okay, just like in the Pac-Man game. Now, let's delete that from the hierarchy. Alright, so we've got the animations created. There's one more thing we've got to do, is we've got to go to our sounds, and we've got to import our sound here. Where did I put it? the death sound. So here's that. And now that we've got all the materials that we need, we can actually close this animation window. Let's see here. Get rid of that. Okay. So, after we deleted all this stuff, let's just press play and make sure our game still works like it should. Looks good to me. Yep. Okay, everything looks good. So, now the first thing we're gonna work on is the we're gonna be working a lot with the actual game board script, okay? Because that's sort of like a central script that manages the game, okay? So, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finally get rid of this update method because we are never gonna use it, okay? Well, I probably shouldn't say never, but we're not gonna use it right now. So, because there's another audio that we're going to need to play, we are going to have to add another variable here, okay, another audio clip variable, and we're going to call this background audio death. Let's call it PacMan Death. Okay. Because we need to be able to play our death sound, right? That's what we want. We want to play our death sound. There's also something else that we have to add, and I'm going to add this one down. Actually, I'm going to add it to the other private variables, and this one is going to be a boolean, and you don't need to worry about that right now, but we're going to call it did start death. Okay, I'm going to set that equal to false. And I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes what this variable is going to do for us. Yeah, I'm going to explain it in a few minutes. Not right now. Just don't even worry about that variable right now. Just know that we needed to create it. Okay, so I'm going to scroll. And before the start method, I'm going to create another method. And I'm going to call this one public void start death. Okay. And then I'm going to create a few more methods. One is going to be called, and it's going to be an IEnumerator method. And I don't know if you guys know what IEnumerators are, but I'm going to tell you in a second. So process death after, and we're going to pass in a parameter here, okay? And then we're going to create another IEnumerator. I'm going to call this one process death animation. And also add a parameter. And one last IEnumerator. That's going to be process restart. And that's going to also have a parameter. Okay. These IEnumerator methods are basically methods that we can use to call as coroutines to our actual game routine. So what I mean by coroutine is that we can process these methods as our game runs without locking up the rest of the game. We can make these methods do things like wait a certain amount of time before something happens and not lock up the rest of our game. So in a different type of game, what you might use something like this for is like, let's say that you want to, like in my Mario game, for instance, okay? The Mario clone that I made, if you guys want to look at that, the way that I've got that working is that there are question blocks, okay? And when you jump up and you bounce up to the question block kind of does this, like, bounce effect. So it moves up and moves back down. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm calling these coroutines to make that happen. Okay, so the coroutine says, all right, move this box this far in this amount of time, and then move it back down in this amount of time. If I were to do that in a regular method, then it would lock up the rest of the things that I'm trying to do because it would be stuck in that while loop doing those two things. So these coroutines kind of like run parallel to all the other processing that you're doing in your game, and other things can still happen. Do we really need to do coroutines with Pac-Man? Probably not, because the Pac-Man game kind of locks up when these things happen anyways. But this is just a more elegant way to do it, I think. So I mean, to each their own. You can probably find a different way to do this, but in my opinion, this is probably the best way, the cleanest way to do it, anyways. So here's the thing. Right now, in the ghost script, we're calling restart every time a ghost kind of collides with Pac-Man and they're not in frightened mode. We're calling this. And then restart basically calls restart on the Pac-Man script and the ghost scripts so that they will restart. But we don't want immediate restart. We want to wait. So we're going to call this method instead. We're going to call this method start death, right? And in order to make sure that this method only gets called once, because if we're colliding, we're continuously colliding, and the collisions continue to happen even after we call the method. So we have to make sure this method only gets called once, because we don't want to have multiple coroutines start when the method's called, so only one time. And that's what we did the did start death variable for. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to say if not did start death, which means that this variable is equal to false currently, okay? Then we're going to set it to true. So basically, once this method's called once, it's going to check, oh, did I start death? No. So did start death equals true, which means that the next time the method gets called, it's going to be true, so the code in here will not run again until we set did start death back to false. And we're going to do that. Let's see. Yep. We're going to do that in our restart method. When this finally gets called, we're going to set did start death back to false, so that the next time we die, we can do this again. Okay, but we only want to do it when we die the once, so that when we collide, just the one collision, when that registers, we want to only call that once. All right. So the next thing we need to do is we need to pause all the ghosts for 2 seconds. So I'm just going to copy this instead of writing this again. And I'm going to paste it right here. Okay? So this right here, again, this gets an array of game objects. We're finding game objects of type ghost, or that are tagged with the word ghost. And then for each of those, we're going to not call restart, but we're going to set canMove, which is a variable that we haven't created yet, equal to false. Which reminds me, we need to jump into the Ghost and the Pac-Man scripts really quick to add this Boolean variable. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to go into Ghost, and go up here to my public variables, and we're going to add in public bool canMove, and we're going to set it equal to true. I'm going to go to Pac-Man, and right here, public boolean canMove equals true. Alright, back to the game board. We are setting canMove to false. Alright, and I'm going to explain what this variable is for in a second. The next thing we need to do, because this will actually, when this variable gets activated in the Ghost script and the Pac-Man script, it's going to make it to where they all freeze. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to set Pac-Man. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to copy this over to here. And instead of using restart, we're going to set canMove equal to false. Okay. So that pauses Pac-Man and it pauses the ghosts. And we also need to stop the animator on Pac-Man. So we're going to do pacman.transform.getComponent Pac-Man. No, not Pac-Man. Animator can get component animator dot enabled equals false. So we're basically saying that the animator should not be enabled right now. So then we're going to stop the background music. So we're going to say transform.getComponent audio source dot stop. So that stops the background music. And then we're going to call our coroutine. So we're going to start coroutine, and that's how you call it. And it's a method, and it takes in an IEnumerator routine. So we've called our IEnumerator process death after. So we're going to do process death after, and open parentheses, and then we're going to pass in the delay. And we want to wait for 2 seconds. Okay? So then all this stuff's going to happen, and this coroutine is then going to get called, right? This process death after. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wait. So we're going to use yield, okay? And yield is a keyword, like it says here, a keyword used to indicate that a method get accessor or operator is an iterator, okay? So if you didn't use yield in an IEnumerator, then it would it could potentially lock up your game. It would be bad. So you need to yield out of your IEnumerator. So we're going to return something. We're going to return a new wait for seconds, and we're going to pass in our delay parameter. Okay, so we're calling our coroutine here with 2. 2 gets passed in as a parameter here. Then we're calling this yield return new wait for seconds delay, which equals 2. Okay, so we're going to wait for 2 seconds before we do anything else. And after 2 seconds, we're going to again get all the ghosts. So we're going to copy this. And we are going to hide them all. Okay, so transform dot get component sprite renderer dot enabled equals false. So the sprite renderer is how things get drawn to the screen. So here we disable the sprite renderer so that the ghosts are not seen anymore. They're basically now invisible, like they should be because they're ghosts. So then after that's done, so we're hiding the ghosts, okay? And yeah, because what happens first is Pac-Man collides with the ghost, okay? So then the ghost kind of stuck on Pac-Man, and he's chomping away at him for 2 seconds. And after 2 seconds passes, we want the ghosts to disappear, all of them. And after that, we want to start our actual animation. So we're going to call our next coroutine. So start coroutine, process death after. No, process death animation, sorry. I knew that was wrong. Process death animation, and we are going to pass in 1.9f as the time, because that is actually how long the audio clip is. So this process death animation enumeration, okay, the way that works is we are first going to get Pac-Man. Let's see here, Pac-Man, and paste that here. And then we are going to make sure that the animation is actually oriented correctly. Okay, so we're going to do Pacman.transform.scale, or sorry, local scale equals new vector 3 and 1111, and Pacman.transform.local rotation equals new vector 3, and that's going to be 0, 0, 0. And then we need to actually start the animation. So we're going to do Pacman.transform.getComponent animator runtime animator controller equals, yes, we haven't created those yet. So let's save this and go into the Pac-Man script. And we are going to add up here public runtime animator controller chomp animation public runtime animator controller death animation. Okay. Now let's go back to game board, and we are going to say Pacman.transform get component Pac-Man death animation, and Pacman.transform.getComponent animator oops, not animation, animator dot enabled equals true. And the reason that we're doing that is because let's say that Pac-Man is at a wall and he's not moving, so the animator's disabled. So then the ghost gets him while the animator's disabled. And if we even set our runtime animator controller, the animation's still going to be disabled, so the death animation will never play. So sad day, right? Anyways, moving on. Let's also play the death audio clip. So we're going to do transform.getComponent audio source dot clip equals background audio Pac-Man Death, and let's make sure that we play it. Audio source dot play. Okay, and then finally we are going to do our yield return, new wait for seconds, and we are going to pass in our delay again. Okay. So then after we wait for the animation and audio clip to finish playing, we're going to call our final coroutine. So we're going to do start coroutine, process restart with a delay of 2, because we want to wait 2 seconds after, okay? And then we're going to process our restart. So then to do our restart, all we're going to do is we're going to hide the actual animation, because the animation ends with the little exploding graphic. So we want to hide that, right? So all we have to do is we have to do game object Pac-Man. Alright, so we can get Pac-Man reference. So then we do Pac-Man dot transform dot get component sprite renderer dot enabled equals false. So we're hiding whatever is currently being displayed in the Pac-Man game object. And then we're going to do transform dot get component audio source, and we're going to stop it because we don't want any audio right now. And finally, we are going to call yield return new wait for seconds, and we're going to pass in delay as the amount of time to wait. And finally, we will call restart. Okay. So how that all works, I hope you kind of followed along here, is we call this method first, public void start death, right? We're going to call that from the Ghost script. Let's save this. We're going to check to make sure that it hasn't been called before in this current death phase. And if it hasn't, then we're going to get all the ghosts. We're going to set their can move property to false. We're going to get Pac-Man. We're going to set his can move property to false. We are going to enable the animator, or actually we're going to disable the animator, because we don't want Pac-Man chomping away at the ghost while the ghost is chomping away at him. And then we are going to stop our audio source, because we want to have no audio as this happens. So ghost collides with Pac-Man, audio stops. Okay, and then we wait for 2 seconds. We say process death after. So this calls this, and then this says, okay, we're going to wait for 2 seconds. And after 2 seconds passes, we are going to disable the sprite render on the ghosts, which means we make them go away. And then after those 2 seconds also, we're going to start our death animation. So the ghosts disappear, and then right after, we're going to jump into this enumeration, and we're going to get Pac-Man. We're going to orient Pac-Man appropriately. Then we're going to start our death animation. We're going to assign our death animation to our animator controller. Then we're going to start our death animation. Okay, we're going to play the sound for our death animation, and then we're going to wait for that to finish, and we're going to wait 1.9 seconds. After 1.9 seconds has elapsed, we get to this line, and then in that line, we say, all right, process restart. We want to process restart, but we want to wait for 2 seconds before we actually call this method. So 2 seconds, this gets called right away. This happens right away. Okay, so Pac-Man, the sprite renderer is disabled so that we can't see any more of the animation that was left behind. We stop our audio source, okay, so that our death animation doesn't play, our death audio doesn't play on a loop. And then we wait for 2 seconds. And then when 2 seconds passes and we've got nothing on the board, we call restart. Restart then goes in and says, all right, well, let's do the restart like we normally would. We'll call restart, the restart method on Pac-Man. We'll also call the restart method on the ghosts. And then we're going to set did start death to false so that all of this can happen again if Pac-Man dies again. All right, so let's save that. And with everything that we've got right now, there's not really a whole lot that that can happen. Because first of all, we're not even calling this method yet. So let's fix that. Let's go into the ghost script and go into our check collision method. And here we're calling restart. Okay, so but we don't want to do that. We want to call start death instead. Okay. And one thing that we should probably do, and that I didn't do last time, is that it's entirely possible for Pac-Man to interact with the ghosts. All right, let's say that they are currently being that Pac-Man is interacting with the ghost. Well, let's see here. We just need to make sure that in the else statement we have to say if current mode doesn't equal mode.consumed. Okay? Because if the mode is consumed, then the mode is no longer frightened. Okay? So then if current mode doesn't equal frightened, then we're in the else statement. And it's possible that while the ghost is in the consumed state, that the ghost can actually trigger this death process, which we don't want, because while the ghost is in the consumed state and finding its way back to his ghost house, he shouldn't be able to hurt us. So this makes sure of that. This makes sure that, hey, I know you're not in frightened mode right now, but you are in consumed mode. And if you're in consumed mode, then I don't want you to kill me. So that's basically what we're saying here. So the other part is that we want to freeze the ghosts, right? So we're going to go into our update method, and we're going to say if can move then we want to update all these methods. We want to call these methods if can move equals true. If can move equals false, then we don't call any of these, which means the ghost is basically frozen, which is perfect because that's what we want. Now, we want can move to also go back to true if if the game is restarted. So in the restart method up here, we're going to actually put a couple of things in. We need to set can move to true. Okay. And then we need to make sure that our sprite renderer is enabled. So we do transform dot get component sprite renderer dot enabled equals true, because we want the ghosts to be actually displayed because we're hiding them in our other script. And we're going to set the current mode equal to mode.scatter. Okay, because let's say that they were in frightened mode and then we do the restart. Well, there's nothing there to say, hey, let's go back to scatter mode. We'll just stay in frightened mode and continue to blink. We don't want that. We want them to go back to what they were. So current mode equals mode.scatter. We're also going to reset the move speed equals normal move speed. And then we're going to set the previous move speed. Oops. Move speed. We'll just set that to 0. Okay. So that takes care of the ghosts, I think. Yep, that takes care of the ghosts. And now we just need to concentrate on Pac-Man. So let's go into Pac-Man script. And we've got the animator controllers. We've got, we need to go into the restart method. And we need to set can move equal to true. We need to set the right animator controller. So animator, runtime animator controller equals chomp animation. And then we need to make sure that it's enabled. Get component animator enabled equals true. Okay. And finally, we need to do the same thing to Pac-Man that we did to the ghosts and basically invalidate all this stuff if can move doesn't equal true. So here, the closing bracket, there we go. All right, so now let's get out of this monodevelop here because we've been coding long enough and jump into Unity because there are a couple of things that we need to do now. First of all, there seems to be a problem. We forgot to put the open closing parentheses because this is actually a method. And then we got one more problem here. It's not a vector 3. Wait a minute, it is a vector 3. It's a quaternion. So we'll do quaternion.Euler for Euler angles because we're lame and we don't know how to actually calculate quaternions. So quaternion.Euler. So let's save that. Let's go back into here. And all the errors are gone. So there are a couple of things we need to do still. And that is we need to go to our game object. And we need to assign our Pac-Man Death audio clip. So let's go to our sounds and drag Pac-Man Death up here. Okay. And now we need to go to our Pac-Man game object and we need to set our chomp and death animations here. So let's go to our animations and Pac-Man. And then we've got Pac-Man chomp and Pac-Man death. Alright. So that should do it. Let's have a look. Alright, so I'm just going to hang out here because I'm scared. Oh! Perfect! And... whoa. Well, something didn't go right. So two things didn't happen. Pac-Man didn't become visible. And the background music didn't start playing. So, let's do that. Transformed get component animator. Oh no, not animator. Sprite renderer. Dot enabled equals true. And then that should take care of that. Let's see if that fixes that. And if it does, we're going to look at the audio and see what happened. Okay, so the audio is not restarting. Why is the audio not restarting? Okay, so that would be in the game board. And that would be process restart. Let's see here. Yep. We need to, in the restart method, we need to actually do transform.getComponent audio source dot clip equals background audio normal, and transform get component audio source dot play. Okay, that should do it. Back to Unity. Alright, Pac-Man, don't let me down. Let's do it. And it's oh so good. Gonna get you. Come here. Got you. Alright, now let's make sure that the ones that were still blue are actually back to the color. There they are. So, everything looks like it's working pretty perfectly. I think we've got most of the game mechanics down. To the point where I feel comfortable enough to move on from game mechanics and actually move toward UI. And there's a lot of things in the UI, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. And that is, so like when we grab the super pellets, or the energizer pellets, and then we get a ghost, see how it stops for a second? Does a sound, Pac-Man disappears, there's a sound, and the score shows up. So that's what we need to be working on next. That, and if you look on the right, there will be a score. And yeah, so that's what we're going to work on. We're going to work on getting that score set up. And sorry. So we're going to work on getting that score set up on the right-hand side, and the other stats, and we're going to make it so that when Pac-Man swallows the ghost, that it freezes for like a second, displays the score, and then the game continues. So it's it's coming together. We're almost done. I think like I said, next week is going to be completely UI. So there's going to be like a we're going to make a start menu. From the start menu, we're going to start playing. We're going to do the intro song for Pac-Man. We're going to do player ready, all that stuff. So look forward to that. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and comments go down below. I'll see you guys next week.